Because I always believe, I mean, for the most part, most people, they get up to work and go to a hospital to help people. They don't want to cause harm. They don't want to cause issues. It's just everyone's coming at it a different way, a different angle, and a different viewpoint. And before everyone gets too jumbled up in their own lane and their own silo, having those relationships and trust where you can open up and talk about it and bring all the information everyone has together and be on the same path forward to really do meaningful change.
Infection stops where information starts. Welcome to the Transmission Control Podcast, where knowledge is your strongest defense. Broadcasting from the front lines of healthcare, we dive into the strategies, science, and stories shaping infection prevention today. Each episode, we connect you with experts on real-world insights to help you stop the spread of healthcare-associated infections, protect patients, and strengthen your practices as an infection prevention and public health expert. When the right information reaches the right people, lives are saved.
Podcast. My name is Garrett Hollenbeek, Editor-in-Chief of Transmission Control. Today we're joined by Whitney Daum, Infection Prevention Program Manager at Common Spirit Health, to talk about the soft skills and the expertise we need to develop victory laps in our own facility that we may not find in a textbook. So we'll be right back after a brief word from our sponsors.
Brought to you from the studios of Healthcare HQ, let's get into it. This is Transmission Control.
Hello and welcome to the Transmission Control Podcast. My name is Garrett Hollenbeek, Editor-in-Chief of Transmission Control, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Jill Holdsworth. Jill, how are you today?
Hey, Garrett. I am doing great. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we are too, and we're getting close to the end of the season, which is always bittersweet. One, because it makes us look forward to the next season and what we've got on the horizon. We've had just such a great bevy of guests this season to talk about their victory laps. Now, our guest today is Whitney Daum. Whitney, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. And for those that don't know you, do you mind giving us kind of an introduction to you and your career and your path in infection prevention?
Sure. So my name is Whitney Daum, and I've worked in infection prevention for over 10 years now officially. My background is nursing, so I'm a pediatric nurse. And then after moving to Colorado from Ohio, I got my master in public health and infectious disease epidemiology and have been working in IP since then. I also got my master's in science and nursing and infection prevention and control because I'm really passionate about nursing education and wanted to really use that as a bridge maybe in the future. And I am CIC certified, and yeah, that's pretty much kind of my background. I bounced around different roles and positions, but right now I'm the infection prevention program manager for Common Spirit Longlaw and then also St. Elizabeth.
I would love to hear how that education background has helped you with how we can better educate our teams and make things stick and sustain. I think that's one of the biggest struggles that IP teams have these days.
Yeah, absolutely. And also just being able to really educate and share our knowledge in the areas that we have specialties in, because infection prevention is so multidisciplinary now, which is great. But just knowing, we have, the med techs and we have the MPHs and we have the nurses still. So how can we foster our knowledge bases and our foundations and share it with our team so we can all be really well-rounded and grow ourselves in our field. I kind of follow from some previous mentors and current mentors that, it just really takes the right person. Mm-hmm. There's parts of the jobs that can be taught, but if you have that heart and that drive and that brain for it, that's always curious and really wants to dig into things, it's great. It's a great field, and we welcome all and we want to foster all.
Amazing. And that's kind of speaks to the episode topic and concept today, is having the right head and the right heart and the right soft skills for victory in infection prevention. So we wanted to start off by talking about some of your experience where you've had to navigate infection prevention without a clear playbook, whether it's an outbreak that you've had to deal with before, even in your experience as a pediatric nurse. How do you navigate IP when there's not clear guidelines and standards to carry you through the whole way?
Yeah. Well, I think all of us that have been in the job for at least 5 years have experienced it with the COVID pandemic. I mean, there was a lot of, nothing was clear, black and white in front of us, what we needed to follow. Foundation of it all is knowing your resources, because this is a field you are going to be very humbled in. And as you get into it, you're not going to know everything. No one knows everything. So it's just knowing where your resources are and where to go to. In infection prevention in a hospital, that is a people thing. So it's just, you have to reach out to the other disciplines, whether it be facilities management, EVS, other people, to get some guidance, because it's not going to be always black and white in your rule book. And then just having to really take observations and picking up just normal trends, normal observations to kind of go with the information you have. So a lot of things, both in IP and in nursing, that have had, an intervention or something done that has changed an outcome, have been from picking up on cues that are just out of the normal, or I say it like shoots off my feelers, like this doesn't seem right. And then knowing my perspective and what I'm looking, but I take my information and then go to other people that I know are kind of experts in the area in their own way and get their viewpoint and get that information and data gathering and facts checking before I make assumptions. And I think that's something that is important to carry through kind of a day to day as things pop up. But then when you're put in front of like an outbreak investigation or a difficult patient that didn't read the textbook, you know kind of where to like question and where things might seem off, so you can investigate that further.
When you're talking about picking up on these cues and things like that, if you're a new IP, how would you guide someone like that to know what you're talking about? Do you have any examples or any kind of advice that you could give a newer IP so that they would kind of know what you're saying here?
Yeah, and I love mentoring new IPs. The one thing I tell them is just don't be afraid to say you don't know and ask questions. And if something comes up and you're not sure of it, it doesn't feel right, go to whoever you've established relationship with and rapport with and tell them about them and about it and ask them about it, because you get more information that way. And I open it up to me, of course, with my new IPs, like if they have a question or, hey, I saw this, what is this? Like explain it more. Also just saying like, hey, if you see something while you're out on a construction walk, on an ICRA walk, like just feel free to grab the contractor or the superintendent and just be like, hey, I'm new to the facility, or I'm new here or there, like this, I just want to know more about this. Can you let me know more about what's going on here in the workings and the rationale, just so I understand better. And then they have that information that they can bring back to whoever their mentor is or the IP that's kind of helping them on board.
I love that approach because it doesn't feel threatening the way that you just said that. The way that you ask, like, I just want to know more about this. Can you tell me I'm new here? Or even just saying like, can you help me understand this? It wouldn't to me feel threatening if I was the contractor or if I was anybody working on a unit. And I think that's half of the battle here, is knowing how to ask, how to approach things, how to speak, so that we don't seem like we're just the police or the auditors, that we're the partner. And that is an art in itself, which is why we're here and why you're so good at this. And just kind of knowing that. And sometimes it takes messing up a couple times to realize, oops, I'm not doing this right. I need to adjust.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's such a humbling job, because you are going to be wrong. I mean, there's cases that you're going to be wrong because we're dealing with pathogens. We're dealing with the basic here viruses that are ever involved in ever changing and bacteria. So that in itself tells us like we are in a job, we always have to be ready to be proven wrong.
Yeah.
Because things change and we have to be open and we have to be keeping asking questions to the right people.
That's such a healthy mindset to have that, we are going to be wrong from time to time, or you may put your foot in your mouth or ask questions about something that's really not a big deal. But if we don't ask questions, if we don't find out about it, and I've been in that situation tons of times where I'm like, hey, this doesn't look right to me. Can we call somebody and ask about this? And then they come down and explain it and said, well, it looks that way because it's, a discharge line, or it's, an exhaust vent, and it's not it should look that way. And then I think it's good to hear from IP leaders like yourself that that's okay to have that level of discomfort and to be wrong and then say, yeah, I'm going to keep asking questions.
Because then when you show that to other people, they know that you are humble. And when they have questions and they see something that's out of the blue to them, they can come to you too. Which, in the same realm as construction, I have had construction workers call out other contractors' projects to me before and be like, hey, I noticed like there's setups like this. That's not how we do it. It doesn't look right. I just want to let you know. And there's been times it's been fine, and there's been times it's been bad and been wrong. I've actually had a contractor like shut down the contractor's project one day. It was kind of a thing, but
Man,
but
and that
there's
wouldn't have
that
happened
too.
if you hadn't asked the question.
Or, EVS workers or the food tray service line, like they are out there just as much, even more than we are. They can be even more our eyes. So just putting in a little bit of knowledge and understanding and comfort and a relationship with them will make them feel comfortable coming to you.
I think that's
Yeah. And I think one thing that is important for people to know is that it takes a little bit of time and an effort, and it's not going to happen overnight, but it does take a little bit of work to form those relationships. But that should be kind of priority number one when you start working in a facility, is building those relationships, because trust is everything in this job.
Trust is everything. 100%. You need those relationships. So when the time comes, you need to go in and be kind of more authoritarian. You have that, and people respect you and understand where you're coming from. Yes, I tell all the new IPs, like, the first thing, you just go out and you're learning yourself anyway. You're learning like how the hospital runs things. If you're new to IP, the whole field, you're just learning it all. So there is your opportunity to partner with the leaders of EVS, partner with the leaders of facility and construction, partner with lab education, get in there, make those relationships as you learn, and then you can work together as you get into the major projects.
Now, you've talked about when you're in those group settings and interacting with different leaders, reading the room, or I think you called it, but TRT, RTR. I see. It's Friday. I've got my acronyms all over the place. Yeah. So RTR, read the room. So what does that mean to you, and how do you go about reading the room when you're dealing with different leaders?
Yeah, the fact that we have to work with essentially every department in the hospital from the top bottom to the bottom, you have to learn your audience. You have to know who you're speaking to, so how you should speak, the language you should speak, the data you present, and how you present it. All of that goes into play because, if you're sitting in a room with surgeons, it's going to be a completely different conversation than if you're sitting in a room with like your infection prevention committee talking about surgical site infections and prevention and areas for opportunity. So you're going to have to tailor things to that, and knowing sometimes where you might come into a meeting where you have it in your mind, you have your data, and you have everything you want to say, but you get in and you just get that feel like, this approach might not be appropriate for right now, and just being like, okay, I'm going to share my data and share my story, but I'm just going to share it in a way that's a little bit more, what do I want to say, like, easy to digest, easy to swallow.
Right. Yeah.
Based on the feel in the room and who's in the room. Because I think after you work and you get relationships and you're around certain groups of people, you kind of know how they think and feel a little bit. And so you already plan ahead, kind of like, okay, if I'm going to present this data, I can expect like, these questions back and maybe this pushback back to navigate around that.
And I think what you just said is something that IPs need to realize they are going to have to learn to roll with the punches. They're going to have to learn to do that. And I have seen some IPs be very uncomfortable with that and having to pivot at a moment's notice. But that is something that it's real. It happens. And you might have to on the spot like that when you get into a meeting, decide in an instant, okay, this isn't going to work. I've got to pivot.
Right. Yeah. And that helps you too then when you are put on the spot unexpectedly for other things. You learn that skill, which has happened to me in a previous facility. It was something we were working on around like universal contact precautions in a blood cancer unit, where the providers all wanted everyone non-contact precautions all the time. And, the nursing staff and us knew like, the literature behind that and the reality. And I got a text from my medical director. He was in a meeting with all these providers and he's like, hey, they're talking about this. Can you come? And it was like out of the blue. And I was like, I don't have anything. I wasn't even the manager at that time. A manager was out. But I knew the story. I knew the workings. I knew the data. I went in. Yes, it was a firing squad at first. But, I pivot. I talked to them all. And we were all laughing and joking by the end of the meeting. So it's just, you have to be able to do that sometimes. Because you don't know what you're going to get pulled into and who with.
I think that it speaks to the flexibility that we have to have, kind of those people skills, the human interaction skills. You have to have a high emotional IQ at times to succeed in this job. And that's a challenge because we may want to ask for the whole enchilada before stepping back and realizing that, like, hey, we don't have chips, corned beef. Like, we have no ingredients here for the whole enchilada. We got to step back and just start with step one before we can get to, we're going to still push the vision, but we're going to do it piece by piece so that it's, like you said, digestible to everybody.
Right, yeah. Because I always believe, for the most part, most people, they get up to work and go to a hospital and help people, and they don't want to cause harm. They don't want to cause issues. It's just everyone's coming at it a different way, a different angle, and a different viewpoint. And before everyone gets too jumbled up in their own lane and their own silo, having those relationships and trust where you can open up and talk about it and bring all the information everyone has together and be on the same path forward to really do meaningful change.
Have you ever had somebody that is just not a good conversationalist and is really not great at emotional intelligence? And if so, how have you kind of coached them? Because not everybody's super extroverted and great at conversations right off the bat. So how do you coach somebody to be successful when they don't come out right at it and being successful like we were talking about?
So this is kind of something simple but silly, and it goes back to my nursing, because I am an introvert. Like, I'm an extrovert introvert. Like, at work in that, I'll be all bubbly, and then I get home and I'm like, oh, like,
don't talk to
my dogs. I don't want to talk to anyone. But it goes back to, like, that making a relationship and bringing the human part in it. So really, it's kind of silly, but I tell people when they're going and approaching people, just saying hi in the introduction brings some human element to it. Like if you're going and you're talking to, I can think of examples, surgeon, that's got their big hair covering and earrings sticking out, which I shouldn't. But you're like, oh, hey, like Dr. So-and-so, I love your earrings. That's great. And how are you? And then kind of just, segue into it. And when you meet people, it also helps you remember their name. If you get introduced to someone and you associate like their name with the color or something they're wearing, it's easier to remember them the next time too.
I've definitely used that
little things.
I've definitely used that tactic before with, oh, I love your fingernails. Those are so pretty.
But no, those need to go.
And by the way, you can't have those.
Yeah. It just, getting to know people on a personal level just helps your job. Yeah, when you need to go in and have the tough conversations, because then they know you as more than the hand hygiene police or the infection lady, as I've been called before. But
the infection.
You're just go ask Whitney, or go to blah blah blah, or back and forth. It just makes it a better atmosphere and a better culture to work in.
I think it does too. Because when we think about, again, kind of this human element, if my buddy asks me to do something, I'm going to say, yeah, for sure. It's not a big deal. If somebody I don't like asks me to do the same thing, I'll be like, I've got 9 million reasons why I'm not going to do that. And whether we like it or not, whether we have the data on our side, the standards on our side, people are going to have to choose to kind of participate, to do what we're asking them to do. And that takes some soft skills.
Yeah. And there's tough parts of the job, we all don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking regulatory, around surveys and that, there's parts of it that are a little convoluted and difficult to navigate at times, and we all get frustrated, but we're all in it together. So if we're going to be frustrated and have challenges, let's work together and laugh about it. And have some commonalities and get through it by making memes with our dogs and with jokes around the Joint Commission, things like that. Because then, yes, when people need help or support with something, people are willing to jump up and we support each other to get each other through it at that point. And there's no us versus them mentality that would hold that back.
I have a question for you. Do you feel like there's soft skills that are needed or that can be developed when emailing? Because some people can speak and email in two totally different ways. Right. And it's like you're talking to different people.
Yeah. Yeah, that is really a challenge. Emails. And then I don't know the majority of infection preventionists in their workplace, but my previous employer and where I work now, it's the chat. We have instant chat too. Mm-hmm. Through Zoom or WebEx or Google Chat. So it's you have that going on too. And that can be a little bit more tricky because it is more fast paced and you are typing and sending, that you do have to pay attention to your punctuation and your inflection and things like that, because it could be misread. It could be misconstrued. And so emails and chat, it goes back knowing who your audience is and the message and story you want to share. And then also just being mindful of how people can take it. And I think, again, that goes back, it helps when people know you and have a relationship with you because they're more likely to understand, when you type out a sentence or a message, how you're saying it and kind of, the passion behind it or whatever kind of email it is. But you do have to be careful about that, and I think it's a skill that's really individual for people. I don't think there's a magic this is how you do it. That just takes time too. And one thing I do personally, and I don't want to ramble much longer on this, is I always, if it's an important email and I know it's going to be seen by the C-suite, I do my whole email and then I'll add names and send it. And sometimes I'll think about things and I'll be it's just going to get buried in email, sending it out at 3 p.m. today. I'm going to think about it more and then I can send it out in the morning and it'll be fresh in the inbox and it'll have another thought okay, am I saying everything I want without it coming off the wrong way?
I think that's a great approach. And I don't know if you've seen this too, or you, Jill, but because AI and ChatGPT is so common now, I've come to really appreciate the emails that were sent to me without being rewritten by AI. Even if they're rougher, or maybe they don't strike the same tone because it's a little bit more authentic. When I get a 4-page email with bulleted points, I'm you should have just called me, or you sent me the rough version of this.
And
I would have gotten more information out of that.
Mm-hmm. You can absolutely tell when somebody has had it rewritten by ChatGPT or some other AI because it just sounds so phony and fake.
Exactly.
And I just end up rolling my eyes oh my gosh, I wonder what they actually said and had it rewritten. I would love to see the real email.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I don't even know how to do it. So my emails are not rewritten.
Mine are not. The AI frustrates me because it doesn't keep up with me when I'm typing, the predictive text. I'm that's not what I want to say. Stop trying to change my words. But yeah, that's a challenge in authenticity. That is a big thing with AI, especially. I love people that are authentic. I honestly exactly like you. I'm fine seeing errors and It's just like those little things that just still make it real, and knowing like really what you're getting through either an email or actually with a person. And I kind of want to highlight back when you said about like the bullet point thing. There's some things you might start writing an email, and if it starts to get too cumbersome, just go and talk to that person.
Yeah.
That's kind of my thing too. And, if it's something you do want in email because you want like a paper trail and you want something to go back and reference, talk to that person, go back to your desk and write an email saying, hey, thank you for talking. I just wanted to send out a summary of our conversation and next steps. Yeah. And then you have that. And that saves just a lot of time, a lot of writing, a lot of if you do your AI editing, and then waiting for the person to read it, digest it, and get back. And they might not fully understand what you were asking, and then you don't even get the answer you want, and you're kind of
just
in
goes another cycle of communication
of inefficiency.
That's a great point, a great approach to doing that, to just go and have the human-to-human conversation. And what I've found doing recently is, because I'm a details person, I'll put all the details in an attachment, put the 3 things that they need to know in the email, and then we'll set up an email or set up a meeting to talk about it in person.
Right.
But I love what you said about this is a person-to-person. The human interaction can't be overstated in infection prevention. And you'd shared with us a story about really seeing the whole patient, from seeing that patient family member and comforting them. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to share that story, because I thought that really encapsulates what it means to really engage with the human side of IP.
Yeah. So there was a time I was actually coming into work, and I was running a little late and going through the halls kind of back behind our ICUs. And I saw in the hallway there was a young lady. She just, looked distraught, and she was on her phone scrambling to look up things. And I just stopped her, and because it was an area that people get lost to in the hospital. And I just wanted to make sure everything was okay because she looked so frazzled. And she was like, yeah, no, it's fine. They just had a loved one in the ICU that they were going to be pulling off support and put on comfort care to pass. And so she was just calling and getting the family there. And I asked her, okay, my condolences, and made sure she had everything she needed for support. Because we know in those times the families need support too, not just the patient. And she was fine. And then, I saw more of the family come. And then later that day, we actually had a meeting to look at an adverse event that happened at a patient in that unit. It was like a CLAPSI, I think. But so we go in, and the nurse manager comes in. This patient's going to be passing. I'm like, is this the patient that's the family out there for? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, I'm pretty sure I gave like a hug to half that family this morning. And then when we had that root cause analysis or that meeting, it just it put a whole new perspective into me, because you're not just talking about like a data point or an infection on your scorecard. You're talking about a human being whose the whole family is right outside the door saying goodbye. So it put another element to it. And I think that's important to bring back the human piece in just those parts of our job.
I think that's so important, because we don't often get the opportunity to meet the family and meet the people who are going through a very emotional time. We only see the name, and it becomes a number on our scorecard, but there is a very human element in all of this. It could just as easily been one of our family members or our friends. And so I think that's really important to keep in mind, because what we do is so important.
Right. It is so important. And we are data heavy. We're epidemiologists, but just remembering, like, in our field, we're at that line. We're not in that big data where we're so far removed, that we're really seeing populations. We are in that in between, that the human being is right in a bed next to us. So we need to keep that balance and keep that connection.
That's such an excellent reminder. And thank you for sharing that story, because it really does bring that full circle from the data that we see, the care that we advocate, to the person and to the family around that loved one.
Right.
Now, as we wrap up, a phenomenal episode, and thank you so much for your insights and your experience that you've shared. What advice would you give to new IPs, seasoned IPs, anybody in this field about developing this human-forward approach to infection prevention?
I have my saying for all of life right now, and that is essentially just touch grass, give hugs, and read a book. And for IPs, just ask questions, ask why. I mean, this is the field, this is the area to ask questions and ask why and go in deeper, because we are in this, like I said, area between the quantitative hard data and qualitative human piece. So just kind of keeping that in mind, then it gets busy and hectic and you get caught in numbers, but sometimes you just have to learn to stop and smell the roses and take a pause. And that's what I like to teach my new IPs too. It's just like, sometimes you just got to take a step back and, just investigate the little side things a bit and then get back to the big picture.
Well, Whitney, we want to thank you very much for joining us as a guest and for sharing your insights and expertise and really a fresh perspective to getting that victory lap on a daily basis in IP. So thanks so much for being on.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thank you for your time.
That was so much fun talking with Whitney, and I love a lot of the strategies that she talked about, especially for new IPs coming in and just kind of not knowing what to do and how to observe and how to start these relationships with the physicians and the staff that you're working with. And I love how she said, just go and learn their names and start to build trust and compliment them so that you remember them. So those were really good ways to start to develop those relationships with people. Even if you're a seasoned IP, when you're new to a facility, you got to figure out how to build those relationships.
Yeah, it's true. And one thing that stood out to me is, in the age of AI and everything's automated, everything's done through computers and screens, that we can't lose that human approach to IP. It is a very human to human. We're protecting patients. We're looking out for their families. And when we're interacting with somebody, whether it's for a compliance issue or for troubleshooting a problem, there's a person behind that email and that issue. So I thought that was a great reminder that it's not only the people that we're concerned about, but also the relationships that we're developing with them. We want to thank Whitney Daum for joining us as a guest today and for our audience for joining us all season long. Remember to check back next week for our season finale of Season 3, The Victory Lap on Transmission Control. Remember, infection stops where information starts.
Thanks for tuning in to the Transmission Control Podcast, where infection stops because information starts. If you enjoyed this episode, let us know. Connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to leave a 5-star rating and share this episode with your team. Until next time, stay informed, stay vigilant, and keep transmission under control.